And in Kilkenny is reported on marble stone there as black as ink that with gold and silver I would support her. I'll sing no more now till I've had a drink.
But see, the best Irish food is Guinness.
Yeah, well, no argument there.
You had the wrong menu on the table. Guinness, Guinness.
Guinness is 3 of the 4 Irish food groups, I understand.
It's the one, the only one. Do you know they say that, speaking of St. Valentine's Day, they say that Guinness is an aphrodisiac.
I have not found it to be so,
No,
but
I know
I'm
that.
happy that...
Well, the only thing that Guinness gets up is your hopes.
You know, I wanted to ask you because you do have, you know, I alluded to it before, but you have a reputation, as do many of the great actors of your generation, of drinking some while you work, or as you work, especially in the theater world. And I was curious, is that really true? Is there, you know...
Wouldn't it be terrible for me to lie on your show and say it's not true?
Yeah,
I remember, I tell you a great story. Can I tell you a story?
Well, that's sort of what these shows are all about.
Oh, I see.
This dovetails nicely for us. Yeah, go ahead. Well, why a story? All right.
There was the 2 guys who there were 3 of us, legends for drinking, okay, and for having a, rough, kind of a wild Rabelaisian life. One was Richard Burton,
of course,
Peter O'Toole, the great O'Toole, and Harris. And O'Toole and I did a play together down in Bristol Old Vic, which is a very famous theatre in England. And during the play, there's about 15 to 20 minutes when actually we're not on stage. So every single night, we'd come off stage together, dash across the street, duck the taxis into the bar. And we'd be throwing back beers and beers, watching the time, making sure we got back on time for our cue, right? Well, one night, we got so engrossed in telling stories that we forgot that we were on stage. And the next minute, the door burst open, and the stage manager came rushing on and said, "Harris, O'Toole, for God's sake, you're on! You're on! There's a full house waiting for you. The play has stopped dead. Come on!" We dropped our drink quickly down our throat, rushed across the street.
Must have been wasted.
No. So we dashed across the street. We were ducking taxis, ducking this and that. I dashed in. I had to make my entrance just before him. As I hit the stage door over the town, I heard my cue. I thought I'll never make it. Dashed up the stairs, dashed across. Pause on stage. Harris is not on. O'Toole is not on. I just dashed on, tripped over a wire, slid right across the stage, right down to the footlights, and hung over onto the lap of 2 or 3 sort of Bristolian old women. And O'Toole was to come on next. And this woman looked at me in shock as my sort of head was in her lap. And she said out loud, "Good God, Harris is drunk!" And I looked at her and I said, "Madam, if you think I'm drunk, wait till O'Toole makes his entrance."
You are of the school and perhaps the heritage and the time where drinking was just something you did when you weren't doing anything else. Is that a fair way to express it?
And when you were doing something else.
Why not? Of course. And when you would go out for an evening, anything ever untoward happen? Like, would you, the next day, would you wake up in a... I mean, how did that work?
Many... Well, there's one in particular which I'm fond of. It's my friend, the late Peter Finch. Mm-hmm. And we were in Dublin together on the lash
And lash?
That means usually having a drop of something cheerful.
I see.
And then doing a lot of leaping and shrieking and saying, why not? And Finchy was living about a few miles out of Dublin, and I went back with him to his house where we were going to spend the night. And it was not too late, about 4-ish.
4 a.m.? Yeah.
And there was a tiny little hole-in-the-wall bar. And we thought we'd just drop in for the last one. Well, we went in and we had a couple of drinks. And the barman, and it was a tiny little, really dirty little place, he said, boys, you had enough. You're having no more. So Finchy and I said, no, we're having much more. No, says he. You're out. So we bought the bar.
There you go. Problem solved.
The following morning, I woke up and Finchy said, do you know what we did last night, mate? I said, no. He said, we bought a bar. I said, what? So immediately on the telephone to cancel checks. But they're not being cashed.
Oh.
So we went to the bar, and there was a man with the 2 checks. And he said, now you 2 boys have got to behave yourselves. And we fell for him. I mean, he was such a sweet guy. And he hadn't bothered cashing. He gave us the checks back, and we tore them up. About a year later, we used to pop in there every night on the way back to Finchy's place. About a year later... About a year later, he died. So Finchy and I went over to Ireland for the funeral. And because we got to know him a little bit and his family. Went to the cemetery, and there was this group around the grave, the family, sobbing noisily, and Finchy and I joined them on our knees. And a woman came up and tapped me on the shoulder, and we were at the wrong grave.
Sorry, it all counts. Oh, my. Had you... at any time during your life, speaking of that, at any time during your life, have you thought what you might like as a final message on your tombstone?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, it's arrived in the 60s. I had an old leather jacket of which I was inordinately fond, and it was covered in Guinness and blood and, you know, the usual.
Yes, sir.
And I sent it off to the cleaner, or my wife sent it off to the cleaner, and it came back. And pinned on it was a large notice saying, Sycamore Cleaners. It distresses us to return work which is not perfect. So I'm having that on my tombstone.
Oh, my.
That's my epitaph.
Lovely.
But you have mellowed, have you not?
I have.
Didn't you do some really strange escapades, you and O'Toole and some of your your buddies?
Yeah, there was once upon a time when Peter O'Toole and my 75% of our body weight was vodka and tonic.
And what did you do?
And I've stopped drinking now, and it's great to wake up in the morning and not come to.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Did you do something really outrageous?
Well, I remember Peter and I were great friends when we were beginning as actors, and I remember one great story. Shall I tell it?
Sure.
Great story. O'Toole and I was I'm asked to do a play in the West End called Ball, written by Bertolt Brecht, and I thought I was all wrong for it. that I shouldn't play it, because the part is kind of about a small little elephantic guy. I thought I was quite handsome, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I was amazed when I said no to it, O'Toole decided to do it. And I thought he's going to make it, Lawrence of Arabia had just come out, and I thought this is a disastrous move from O'Toole's point of view. Why would he want to do something like this that he can't really play? So I thought, well, and the reviews were wonderful when he came out, and I thought, I'll have to go and see this play, because I can't believe he's good in it. So I didn't want to go as Richard Harris, because the front of house manager will tell O'Toole that Harris is there. So I went to a costumer, and I got dressed as a Roman Catholic priest. And I went to a mate of mine and bought a ticket and set up in the gallery, dressed as a priest, with, you know, with the breviary and the rosary beads and the hat and the old collar and all that. And I'm watching O'Toole, and every act he's better and better, and by the end of the play, he's unbelievably brilliant. So I have to go back and tell him he's great. But I can't go back dressed as a priest. He'll ask me why. I get one of those from him, see?
Sure.
So I said to my friend, swap clothes, give me your suit, you take the priest outfit, and we'll swap. Well, the next day, in one of the newspapers, the Daily Express said, there was commotion during the matinee of Peter O'Toole's ball, where a Roman Catholic priest was seen to undress in the gallery. Right? So I went back and I saw O'Toole with this guy's clothes on, and he never said a word. He obviously found out. He never said a word. 7 years later, I have a hit record, thanks to you, MacArthur Park, which I did here for the first time. Went from number 21 to number 1. And I decided to go out on a one-man concert tour. And I go up to the north of England where no one can see me break it in, okay?
Taking it on the road.
On the road, way up in Scunthorpe. Now, even Scunthorpians don't know where Scunthorpe is. So I went up, and I'm doing this show, breaking my show in, coming into the West End. And I'm singing a song, and I hear commotion out in the back of the hall. So I stopped the orchestra. I said, what's going on out there? And a voice said, I'm Peter O'Toole. I'm here dressed as a nun. He did. 7 years later.
He waited.
He waited 7 years.
Oh, that's a marvelous story.
Yeah, 7 years. Fair play.
The Royal Navy have got me now. You tackle well. Could we use you? We'll bring you on the last 5 minutes. If Foley fails,
you can be on the last 5 minutes. I'll be the referee.
You know, maybe you do know this, maybe you don't know this. I don't know if you keep in touch with the man or not. Richard Harris has been on our show many, many times in New York City. He's always delightful, always charming, always has great stories. And sometimes he has stories about you. And I was wondering if tonight, maybe, you happen to have a story about Richard Harris.
Oh, I'll shuffle through my memories. Clean?
Whatever you want. This is British TV. Go nuts.
Well, in the old days when Richard and I were young and poor, he lived in a dirty little spot in Earl's Court. It was a cupboard, I fancy, which he'd rented. And one night we'd been frolicking.
Now, what does that mean? Let me stop you right there. When you say frolicking, what are we talking about?
Well, it's a kind of joicing word, really. An F and a ollock and a...
Well, yeah.
And we'd finished our frolicking, and of course I was living nowhere in particular, so I thought I may as well kip on Richard's floor or his sofa, or even if he was too drunk, I could kip in the bed, didn't really matter. And we got back to this little filthy spot of his in Earl's Court, and we were hungry, and not hungry for beer or whiskey.
A meal, an honest meal.
Hungry.
Yeah.
So we opened the freezer, and inside there was one chop.
Pork chop?
I don't know if it was a pork chop or a lamb chop or what kind of chop it was.
I'm going to pretend it was a pork chop. All right?
There was this old pork chop.
All right, good.
Kosher pork chop. Ancient. Clearly been there for quite a long time. Not as savoury as a camel. So we smelt it, looked at it, and thought better of it. We won't. So we threw it through a window. Pop. Came the morning, we left his hole, and under the window from which we'd thrown the pork chop, there was a dead dog. My dear friend Richard Harris tells the same story, but in his version, it's a cat.
Whole different deal.
Which will show you what condition Richard was in.
Oh, I thought it might have been a cat, yeah. Well, either way, it's a lovely story.
I love it, I love it, I love it.
That was, you know, it's funny because you mentioned Peter O'Toole, but you know, in the last couple of years, it's become more, I think, more chic, probably in the last 10, 15 years, and correct me if I'm wrong, more chic, actually, probably, to be Irish. Oh. There was a time, probably when you were starting out, I'm thinking in the 50s, when being an Irish actor trying to make a living in England was very difficult.
It was very rough. It was very, I think I was the first Irish-born actor to play leading roles and to get Academy Award nominations, and that was the very, very first. And when I got to England first, though, it really was tough. You were cast as a policeman, or as a navvy on the street, or you know, a labourer. You couldn't get it. You could not get a decent job. And I remember a story that I was doing in my first year out of school, drama school. I was playing in Macbeth, and I was playing a small part in Macbeth of the doctor. This snobby, sophisticated, racist English actor was playing Macbeth. And he had to have a whipping boy, and it was Harris because he was Irish. Oh, God's sake, Harris, can't you learn to speak the English language correctly? Don't you know you don't pronounce it like that? Oh, for God's sake, can't you stand with the right mark? Oh, God, I thought I hated this man. I said, I swear to I'll get you one day. So, now, you must remember I'm playing the doctor. Came the opening night, packed house, Harris is playing the doctor, and the most important scene in Macbeth is when Lady Macbeth commits suicide. And I, as the doctor, have to come on stage for my tiny little part, my only little entrance, and I have to say, and Macbeth turns and he says, "How goes the Queen?" And I have to say, "The Queen, my lord, is dead." And then he stops and he says, "She should have died hereafter." Now it leads into the greatest soliloquy from Macbeth, which is, "Tomorrow, tomorrow, and tomorrow creeps without petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time." That's his cue. I give him the cue. I thought, I'll get him. I hate him. Harris. The Queen dies. Harris comes on stage. The actor says, "How goes the Queen?" And I said, "She's fine." She's great. She's great. She's terrific. She'll be right down now in a second in a night dress. She is terrific, I said. And I stand up, I said, "She's terrific, she's grand," and I know I'm fired. "She's great, and she'll be right down now any minute, and you'll get on great together." And I got off the stage quick, and the last thing you heard me say, going out the stage door, was, "Taxi!" You knew I was fired. Fired.
You didn't call back after that point. Oh my God! All right. How much time do we have here, Jeff? Oh, great. Because I do not want this to stop.
I'll come back.
Will you come back sometime?
Sure.
Please do come back. Sure. I'm curious. I did want to mention. It is Valentine's Day, and you have a reputation for you know, the many loves in your life. You've been married how many times?
Twice.
You've been married twice.
Twice.
Okay. Yeah. And you've had romance difficult for you?
No, they threw me out. I mean, I have to. I must tell you, I am the closest friends of my two ex-wives. They were totally justified throwing me out. I mean, I was impossible. Totally impossible. Never there, never here, never home, always away somewhere. I'll tell you a funny story, actually. My first wife...
I don't think you can miss.
Okay, my first wife was divorcing me, right? And she had this sort of very shrewd lawyer And my first wife is a sweetheart, and she's a sweetheart. Today she's my best mate. But her lawyer never told her, but he hired a private detective to follow me around London to build up a kind of case against me. There was no need to build a case against me. Just open the newspapers, and there was cases against me.
Just say, it's Richard Harris.
There it is. That was a justifiable divorce on her part. So I was tipped off that this guy was following me, and he was watching every move I made. And I found out his name, and I found out his home number, and I kept it in the pocket. Well, about a month afterwards, I was in the Dorchester Hotel in London, and I was really drunk. I drank about a bottle of a brandy it was actually, right? And it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I thought, I'll have some fun. So I get his card out of my pocket, and I ring him up to his home. And a very tired voice said, hello? And I said, are you Mr. So-and-so, the private detective? He says, yes, I am. Well, this is Richard Harris. You can hear that. Because he didn't know, he didn't think I knew. I said, well, I've got to tell you something. I said, I am pissed drunk. I don't know where I am. Could you please tell me where I am?
Put him to some use. If nothing else, put him to some use.
Can you tell us, give us a story about yourself and Peter O'Toole?
Oh, well, we were great friends, Peter. He was in the academy in London, and I was in the academy, not the same one in London. We kind of were good chums. We were kind of both students.
School kids?
School kids.
Yeah.
And there was a play on in Brighton. Paul Schofield was doing a play, and we wanted to go down and see him. We didn't have any money, too much money, so he had an old rackety old car. We went down to Brighton, and you know, Brighton's on the coast, right on the sea coast with the beach and all that kind of thing. And we go down there, and we book a presidential suite at the hotel. You know, we don't have too much money. We're
big
students.
shots.
Big shots,
yeah.
Big shots. So we go to the play, and we drink all weekend. We own room service. But finally I said, we have to leave, Peter, in about an hour. How much money have you got? He said, he'd nothing. I had nothing. We couldn't pay the bill. It was pouring with rain outside, storm, and the beaches were dangerous to swim, and there was huge waves and so forth. You can't swim. And I said to Peter, look, I got an idea. Let's take off your clothes now, strip. So he stripped, I stripped, and we left on our underwear.
Good thinking.
And we rolled them up into a ball. We rolled them up into a ball, and I threw them out the window into a little side street where our window was facing out, the side street, out the bathroom window. It landed. I said, come on, let's pretend we're going for a swim.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't get out without paying the bill. So we put towels around us, and we walked out the lobby. Hello. And they said, and this woman there, the manager said, where are you going? So we're going for a swim. She said, swim? A swim? It's dangerous. The waves are 10 feet tall out there. There's a current. You can't do that. And I said, yes, we're going for a swim. We're going for a swim. We're Irish. We're tough. We know how to deal with these things. Out we go. As soon as we're out the door, we snuck up the little side lane, got our clothes into the car, got his car off. Didn't pay the bill.
Cool.
Terrible cool. But the end of the story was this. O'Toole now, years later, did Lawrence of Arabia. He became a big star. I did Camelot or something, became a big star. And I go down to Brighton 10 years later to do a concert. And I unfortunately forgot about the story of the stealing the hotel, not paying the bill. And I go in, and I recognize the lobby. Oh my God. And I'm signing my name, and it's the same woman behind the desk. I signed in, and I got, and I covered, and I was walking towards the lift. She said, oh, Mr. Harris. So I said, yes. She said, we thought you and Mr. O'Toole drowned.
I've been drinking, and I'm seldom sober, a constant rover from town to town, and now I'm sick, and my days are over. Come on, your story, and I lay me down. We're at Twickenham straight up. We're going to kick off with that.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the day.
My lords, we're off. hold it up. Right.